This is Flat Out Agility, an Australian agility podcast. I'm Grace. For this episode, I'm joined by Ryan Fonti, President of the Agility Dog Club of New South Wales. ADC New South Wales is the largest agility-only club in New South Wales and runs agility trials under both Dogs Australia and ADAA. Ryan has been president since 2023 and surprisingly doesn't actually do agility himself. He joins me today to talk about what it takes to run a club of this size over two agility organisations. Welcome, Ryan. So tell us, how do you end up as president without actually being an agility handler?
Well, it's actually a little bit unconventional, isn't it? My partner, Jess, has been doing agility for, I want to say, nearly 10 years now. And probably about 8 years ago, I got invited to come along and sit in a committee meeting, and we we're going to go to dinner afterwards. And at the end of that meeting, I was suddenly the club's new equipment manager. And 12 months later, I was on the committee full-time, and another 12 months after that, I was vice president. And, stayed for a dinner, ended up with the presidency. Been president since 2023. Absolutely love it because I've fallen in love with agility myself. But yes, I don't run a dog. I don't own a dog, but I have run dogs, which is fun.
So tell me, what is the role of presidency for you? What do you mostly do?
Well, I came involved in the club a really tough time. It was just before COVID, so it really hit ADC New South Wales hard in terms of we completely shut down over that 2020-2021 break. And while agility stopped, the bills didn't stop coming in for grounds and lease hires, etc. So a lot of our funding that we had available went towards keeping the council happy, because we all know how councils operate. And when we sort of returned to training, our last president had moved on and the opportunity for me was there. And I thought, well, I'm not an agility expert, but with my work background and governance background, I thought, I can jump in and steer the ship and hopefully get us back on track. And that's how I really got involved, and that's where the club wanted to go down that path of having me come in and look after things and steward us forward. And fortunately, we blossomed through that period, so we're back on track and ticking over with our regular training and umpteen number of competitions and trials a year now.
That's great. And so can you tell me how much you know about sort of the history of ADC New South Wales? Like, how did it come to be? When did it start?
Well, yeah, we're a few years shy of being 40 years old. We were founded in 1989 by a group of agility enthusiasts who saw the need to get the sport active and form a club. And from my memory, I think it was early 90s, 91, 92, around there, it was affiliated with Dogs New South Wales, Dogs Australia, or ANKC as it formerly was. And our first ever competition was in 93. And I know that because I had a old member recently drop into club with a USB stick with some old home video of the inaugural competition on it, which was just incredible to watch the old versus compared to today, how the sport's evolved. It was started by a group of enthusiasts who were just really determined to get a club up and off the ground in New South Wales. There were obviously some others, but in Castle Hill more so. Since then the club's just grown alongside the sport. It's becoming more popular, especially in the likes of Sydney. So demand has increased, and we've evolved to meet that demand. So we had to scale up a lot in terms of our offerings with our training programs.
That sounds fascinating. I'd love to see that video from 93. That'd be very cool to compare.
Yeah, it's very scary in some ways because we all know about the safety aspects these days and how focused we can be on that to see what it was compared to what it is now. But it's also exciting to see um, what the past held and how we've driven it to where we are now.
So what does ADC New South Wales look like in numbers? You know, how many members do you have? How many committee members do you have? How many trial entries do you normally get?
We're quite large. We float in terms of membership between sort of 160 members to 200 on a given year. Not all of those members are fully active, so we have probably, I think, on average, around 140 odd active members. Got a lot of life members, and then some family members and dual members, etc. And then the dropouts. We get some people that come through and don't want to continue on. In terms of our volunteers, we're very fortunate. We have a large volunteer base at our club. In fact, it's part of the ethos that I promote is that, we're all here for each other and that we all should give back to the sport we love. So I'm very lucky in that respect that our club has a healthy volunteer base. And I'm supported with a very stable and great team of committee members. There's 8 of us on our main committee, and then we've branched out into various number of subcommittees for various things. We have a education and training subcommittee, or ADA subcommittee, or ANKC trial subcommittee, media and social media team, all sorts of subcommittees that are needed for various aspects, equipment, and all that to just make it function. And then you mentioned trial entries. Well, those are unique. Sydney trials can be quite large. I think a quiet trial for us is probably around 350 to 400 runs on a Friday evening. Our largest trial is our October 2-day trial, which could see upwards of almost 1,800 runs over the 2 days, which is quite large, and a lot to manage. But as I mentioned, we have a great team here at ADC. So we're very fortunate that we can offer what we can offer with a huge volunteer base backing it.
I am very sad to have missed the October trial last year. I was supposed to go and it just didn't work out for me. But so tell me, what does a Sydney trial look like?
They are very busy, lots of chaos because you tend to get a lot of handlers with a lot of dogs, usually 2 rings. Our October one has 3 rings, which is even more chaos because we're offering a lot. So clashes is something that's massively hard to avoid. We try to do our best. Obviously, we could go bigger, but I don't want to because it's too much work for our club. Um, I had a judge from WA in 2024 who was just exhausted after the trial and had commented, he said, "I don't think I would do it again the whole day." And I like, that's fine. This was new for us, working out how it's going to look. And then she's like, "You had more entries than our WA nationals." And I went, "Really?" I'm like, "Well, it is WA. It's a bit far, but also, wow, we've got an event that's on the scale of the size of a potential national somewhere. How am I going to manage this?" But we've got a great team, like I said, and I'm able to rely on all of our subcommittee members in their various roles to just dig their heels in and get all the nitty gritty bits of what's required to get these events off the ground. And we have great success with them. People love them. We're having a lot of fun, bringing positive energy to trials and competitions we host. So, and that's our main goal at AD. So that's something that I promote heavy is that I want to have fun, enjoyable, positive environment, regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. And so besides running like really big trials, what are the other unique challenges a club of this size that you face?
Training. We have a lot of people interested in getting into the sport, um, but only so much availability. So our junior classes, if you will, we try to limit them to around 10 people. So it's a 10-to-1 ratio on an instructor. They go for an hour classes. And in our session 1 class time slot, we have 5 groups going from beginners through to our sort of pre-trialing class, if you will. I'd say 50 to 70 people because the groups do get bigger and smaller depending on promotions and add-ons and drop-ins and things. But trying to manage the demand for a spot in the club has been hard. We offer an entry program, which we call the Taster of Agility class, which is like a 5-week program of just basic, play around on some gear and basic get to know your dog and have some fun over a couple of little jumps and micro tunnel and a mini A-frame lowered down. And if you really love it, come and join us in our beginners class. Or if it's not for you, we can sort of weed you out or weed you into the club, if you will. And that for the last few years has just sold out at a second's drop of it going online. It was a big post-COVID boom with dogs, and I need to get active and do something with my dog. That's dropped down a bit now, so it's a little bit more manageable. But the last few years we've had like almost, I reckon, probably around 100 to 150 people on various wait lists for things. So that's a big challenge for us, is just to manage the accessibility to agility.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, how do you approach your recruitment? But it sounds like that's not really what you need to focus on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're fortunate with like we are doing a bit of recruitment. Like I said, we've had a bit of a decline now. We sort of think the curve has changed again now that we're out of the sort of pandemic phase, and people are still keen, but we're not seeing as much heavy interest. So, but we're fortunate. We do a lot of promotion through like our demonstrations, and events that we do. So our club is we work with the Sydney Royal a lot. So we do demonstrations during the lunchtime breaks and things during the Sydney Royal, and that's for that example there, we already brought in 3 potential people into that new class, which is incredible. I know it doesn't sound like much, but 3 people into available 10 spots is great. And then social media is the other big hitter. Keeping the club social media stuff active and engaging brings people in as well.
What would you say the biggest barriers to entry are for new handlers sort of in this sort of bigger, more populated environment? Like, are you finding that people come to you with certain, I guess, sort of queries or
Yeah, a couple of things. Cost is the big one. We're in an expensive world these days, so the cost of living drives people's choices. We've had a lot of people interested, and then when they find out, oh, membership's going to cost this, or I've got to, buy crates and treats, and my dodgy cheap jerky from Woolies isn't rewarding enough, and I need to go and buy XYZ that's $40 a bag. That can drive them away a bit. The other complexity is people bringing in dogs without any basic training or manners, that just think the dog's going to be a superstar and they know best and don't want to listen and end up having issues. So they're some of the barriers and things that come up that make it hard to keep them on board. And a lot of the time, I think some of the newbies that start feel like they're learning an entire new language, and it's a bit too much for them. But we try and bring it back a bit, scale it down, and just try with the real basics in our early stages of our training before hitting them with the more complex stuff.
and so how would you keep handlers apart from, I mean, that's a good strategy, but what other things do you do to keep those handlers engaged so you can retain the longer term members?
Yeah, so one of the things that we try and push really early on is them getting actively involved in the whole club aspect. So simple things like we have on our requirements for checklists to move up to promotions, etc., that they come and volunteer on club comp nights, and we get them involved at our actual trials and competitions throughout the year. Come down. We want you to scribe. We want you to lead through. We want you to see what you could be doing in the future in the ring to be the next big superstar running around the course. Getting them actively involved in the entire club life rather than just I'm here for my 1 hour every week, see you next week sort of deal. I love to have that great sense of community. A core value, if you will, is that community aspect. So, yeah, just really pushing that constantly and being supportive. We always tell our instructing team that we want to boost the confidence constantly. We want them being connected and engaged and being supported and feeling positive about every aspect of training, whether it's something that's gone well or something that's gone bad that they can take a lesson away from. It's not about the big wins necessarily all the time. Sometimes you can take a small win and thrive off that. So, yeah, it's hard work for our team, but very rewarding when we're seeing all of these handlers moving through various stages of the training program and through to competing eventually.
Yeah, and so on trials again, just coming back to it, something that's unique about your club is that you offer trials under both Dogs Australia and ADA. So as someone who's not familiar with ADA, we don't have it in the NT. What are the key differences between these organizations?
We get asked this a lot. They're fairly similar, agility and agility. I'd say one of the really big obvious differences is the contact equipment. ADA has slightly bigger contact, uh, physical contact size, but their contacts are smaller, so the zone is smaller. So that's probably one of the major differences. ANKC, we have like a rule review sort of process every 5 years, whereas ADA is more flexible because it's a national run organisation through each state rather than state bodies. The board has the option to review stuff constantly, which is really proactive and um, important when we might see that, you know, 12 months into the new set of regs, we've popped up with something that's a concern. We can change it almost instantly rather than having to wait for the next 5 year cycle to submit it and then have to have everyone on board. Um, yeah, as I mentioned, ANKC stuff's run through each state, which brings its own complexities because each state body can put on its own little sort of rules regarding various things. So if you're an interstate competitor, you often have to keep up to date with what's going on in various agility subcommittees, little rules and things, whereas ADA is just blanket across Australia. The regs are the regs. It's the same everywhere you go. And ADA has the single board, so any changes or anything important communication wise comes directly from them, and it's really central rather than having to go through multiple partners to get something. So that's probably my major difference there.
When did the club sort of decide to run under both rather than choosing one or the other?
It was during COVID, actually. We sat back and, we had a lot of time on our hands as a committee to think about how we were going to come out of that period of time. And we were sort of reviewing our various options and we thought, well, we've got ADA. It's underutilized by clubs. In fact, I don't know that there are any other dual affiliated agility clubs in New South Wales. Um, so it was for us a no-brainer that we could offer the best of both worlds for our competitors. So we were very lucky that we actually had a former board member at the time who was a board member of ADA on our ANKC committee at ADC, and we basically just started the conversation with her to say, what do we need to do to get involved? And it was quite a simple process of just signing up, joining ADA, familiarising ourselves with the rules and regs and going from there. In fact, our first 24 months almost, we competed with dispensation on equipment. So we were just using the ANKC approved gear. And then in late 2023, we purchased our own set of ADA contacts, which we were fortunate enough to fundraise for. and that's the rest is history. We've just been running both codes for the last few years. So it's quite a challenge. Like we host 14 competition days a year. So we have our 4 ANKC trials, which 2 of them are 2 days, and then some ADA trials. And we also host a number of other clubs. We're in a fortunate position to be able to do that at ADC. So that's how we ended up with ADA on board. We just wanted to offer the competitors and the community the best of both worlds, really, and access to the sport.
Yeah, I mean, when you can, I think that's really cool. And so you've talked a little bit about the main differences, but are there any rules that differ that are really sort of significant to handlers or judges?
There are some little things, the main thing, as I mentioned, was probably the contacts. That is something to get used to because we've got quite a significant difference in the contact size zone. So they're only 900 in ADA. So a lot of people struggle with their contacts initially coming over because their dogs might be a bit used to the ANKC contact depth. ADA has quite a few programs on offer, which can be challenging to understand from the international program, the junior program, the combined and regular programs. I'm still learning. I get it muddled up every time. So, but it is all available in the ADA's regs and website, and it really breaks it down. So, it's about again ADA offering the right choices for you and your dog. So things like ANKS has only recently adopted lower heights for dogs as an option. ADA's had that for 25 plus years with their regular program. So it's things like that that have been beneficial for handlers over time. And that was another reason why we sort of looked at bringing it in because at the time we had members with dogs aging out to an older degree. They wanted to jump from at lower heights. And, we thought, well, here's an option we can bring in to support you and continue your journey a little bit longer. The jumping and agility rules fairly similar. ADA has weaves in jumping, except for their elementary class, which is more of a standard you'd see from around the world, I guess. They tend to follow a lot more international standards where they can. And ADA, as I briefly mentioned, has a really good dedicated juniors program for handlers from the age of sort of 10 to 16. So they can compete for titles with any dog. So it doesn't matter who they're handling or what they're handling. It's a junior handling program built around building confidence and not necessarily running a novice dog, so they can run dogs of different standards. So that's really cool. That's really the sort of things that I can think of at the top of my head. There's a lot of similarities and then just some subtle rule differences that are in play.
So do you find that they attract different handlers to each sport, or is there a lot of overlap?
That's probably a lot of overlap. You'll get some that are just not interested in doing both codes, and that's fine. And then you've got a lot that are wanting to play agility all the time, and that's exciting. That's the best part about offering the best of the both worlds. They can come and compete and gain a whole bunch of different types of titles through ADA and gain them through ANKC, whatever suits them. So we do see a large proportion of the competitors that compete across both.
And how do you manage the sort of admin side of running under 2 bodies? Like, does it get challenging in that way?
Not really, surprisingly. As I mentioned, we had, or still have, a fantastic group of volunteers on our subcommittees. So I leave all of that to our ANKC trial subcommittee and our ADA subcommittee, and they come back to us if they have any issues. So it runs really smooth. And, if you're able to have a good team working with you, like, for example, our ANKC trials, for 2026. I have prepped, planned, contracted, and submitted to Dogs New South Wales in November last year. So everything's planned there. ADA, we tend to leave it not as early because we have a smaller judging pool. You've got to work around some availabilities there. So we sort of aim to get our first half of the year organised in the first few months, and then we've just sort of finalised June, July now, and then after July trials, we'll sort out the remaining ones, and it's pretty straightforward. Probably took a couple of hours of work, and that's a few people, and easy to manage, really.
Are there any sort of conflicts between the two that create complications, like, for you guys?
The only conflict I have is the storing of the equipment because we have the different size contacts. That provided a challenge, but generally no. Like there's nothing really. Dog sports is booming. I think it's booming across the whole country with things like scent work and luring and herding and you name it. Everything's booming. People want to do cool stuff and fun stuff with their dogs. So we used to worry a lot about conflicting dates with other clubs and trials and things, but really the dog sports calendar now is so insane that you can't avoid that with other clubs and other disciplines. So we try our very best there, but you can only do what you can do now that it's grown so much in the dog sports world. So that'd be the only two little things. But other than that, it runs really smooth.
And you were mentioning earlier about the judging pool being smaller for ADA. Is that the main difference, or are there other things that are different about, like, sort of getting judges?
Not really. The judge pool is a bit smaller with ADA, so you just have to work with that. Who's available, when, where, and how. I see it no different to contracting an ANKC judge. It's probably the same administration time as going online and getting the details, reaching out. Are you available? Yes, no. Yes, I am. Here's a contract. Can we sort you out? Um, it's pretty similar. But yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit harder with the smaller pool of judges just to get availability. Um, but I work around that. I don't try to see that as a challenge. I just go, well, let's make it happen. So we, um, at ADC New South Wales, we support another ADA club called Pixie, Parramatta International Canine Sports Club. And they're quite small, so and they don't have competition grounds, so they come and use ours. They use our gear, and we host them there a couple of times a year for their trials. So we tried something new this year where we're having a 2-day ADA trial, and we're going to share judges over the 2 days. And then that presented challenge in itself because we couldn't get local judges just with availability. And I said, well, um, let's bring in someone from interstate. Problem solved. And so, there being a smaller club, for example, might not be able to afford the flights and the con, etc. So I said to our team, we will cover the judges, you cover accommodation. We have 2 days of fantastic trialing. So yeah, just troubleshooting and working with people to get it organised. It's not that much work, and it's not. I don't want to set it as a hard challenge. Everything can be achieved if you set your mind to it. So
We've sort of talked about this, but I guess I'm curious if there's, like, a handling style difference that you notice. So you're saying that people usually do both. Handlers are usually entering, both Dogs Australia trials and ADA trials. But are you seeing stylistic differences, or is it all pretty similar?
it's all very similar, in my opinion. I can't speak for other handlers, but generally it's the same. It's agility, jumps, tunnels, obstacles. There are different slight rules, so you might see some slight different handling. With the main thing I want, like I probably already said it, is the contacts. You really have to be aware of that. The weaving rules. Just making sure that the handlers understand ADA versus ANKC, and that's going to be a challenge because they've just changed to ANKC as well. So it's just Yeah, just those tiny little differences, but other than that, it's pretty similar.
This is probably the same question in a different way, but is there any cultural differences having those different rules or different backgrounds or different starting places?
Culturally, yeah, very different with ADA trials. For some reason, and I can't work it out, they seem to be a lot more calmer than an ANKC trial. It's really bizarre. I can't explain it, and I can't crack the code as to why it is. And the other big cultural difference is that with ADA, handlers are expected to be involved with the trials. So, it's written in the regs that, you've got to get involved. You've got to help with scribing. You've got to help with leading stewards and all that sort of stuff. So that's sort of been ingrained in them from day one. So and the trials seem to go a lot quicker. I don't know. I can't work that bit out either.
But you're having the same entries numbers wise.
And we're having the same entries and the same people, but there's some sort of weird crossover between the two where an ANKC day feels like it's more stretched out, and an ADA trial tends to go, well, ADA, for example, we have to be finished within 8 hours. We cannot. That's just regulation because it's a work health and safety thing for judges and for people and volunteers. We've got to get it done. Whereas ANKC can tend to float along and you've lost track of time before you know it, and you're been there for 10, 11 hours at a full day trial. So that's a big difference, I'd say there, but I haven't been able to work out why.
That's fascinating. I'm wondering if the only thing you've said in this so far that would maybe explain it is the judges being different, because it sounds like there's not crossover for judges, but there is for everything else.
Potentially, I don't really know. It's an odd phenomenon that I just can't explain, and I've said that since our first ever ADA trial that we hosted. I couldn't explain it.
So looking to the future, what does the sort of the best future for ADC look like?
For us, my focus is definitely making it about sustainable growth for us. So being able to manage and maintain what our limits are for our volunteers. Um, Understanding that we all have very busy, active lives these days, and a lot of us are competing and actively engaged in various disciplines. So, making sure that we can keep the training program healthy and strong, and keeping the sport active. And sort of, I've always tried to have ADC act as a lighthouse club, if you will, to bring in the future stars and to bring in people that might go on to do bigger and better things across New South Wales or across the country. So, that's what I see our future as, continue being that leader, if you will. But every club's doing a great job with what they're doing. That's not to fault anyone there, but that's just what I want to bring to the sport.
And what do you wish that people understood about what goes into running a club like this?
Uh, that's a good one. Look, probably behind every 30 to 50-second odd run, is hours of effort that's gone in by volunteers. And with that, I feel like there's more of a need, for patience and a need for respect that club volunteers, and competitors, um, understand that it's not our full-time job, and that they can just chill and relax and understand that we get that there's things that come up and that we will work with you to make it happen. You're not gonna miss out. That's what I think it would be.
Well, it sounds like ADC New South Wales has a bright future. It sounds like it's got a really excellent committee. So, yeah, I will hope I can get to an ADC hosted trial in future one day.
Yeah, we'd love to have you down.
Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This has been Flat Out Agility. Be kind to dogs.